Hi everyone. I'm going to try this the old-fashioned way that's not live, but I do want to answer your questions and get it out there on the web. So we're talking about decoding, and I wanted to first of all calm your fears that decoding is a very complicated subject to understand when you're talking about literacy. You have to not only understand how to teach it, but you need to understand how to assess it. And I know that that's something that you're not going to get just from 1 week's presentation. You're in luck though, because we are going to do a second week presentation on this when we get to assessment. But I want you to know that even after that assessment week, when you walk away from this topic, don't feel like you have to be an expert because you won't be. But you do know the topics, the vocabulary, and you've heard something about it. And what that means is further down the line in your education process, when this comes up again, you're going to have some confidence because you're going to understand the subject. So just know that you don't have to walk away with it as an expert in this topic. That being said, I'm going to answer your questions and give you some more information. The first question comes from Gabby, and Gabby wants to know, is there an easier way to teach decoding skills to students? So decoding skills you're not going to want to teach until you have a student that you know is ready to move into the reading process. So number one, we know that that means they have those concepts of print. They understand how print works, top to bottom, left to right. We know they understand the difference between letters and words. We know that they understand, they have some basic sight words. They have the ability to know the sounds of most of their letters. And most of all, they have the motivation and patience to learn. Without those skills, you don't want to teach reading to anyone yet. So let's say we have that, and you're in a kindergarten class probably. And what we want to focus on is, first of all, matching the picture on the page to the word in the print. So the best thing that you need, the biggest thing you need to do when you talk about decoding is you want to make sure that your students are in the right book. And that we're going to get to during assessment week, but we want to make sure that the book they're reading in is either on their independent or instructional level. That means when they open the book, they are successful with at least about 94% of the words. And that means they're not going to run into a ton of words that they don't know. Those beginning reader books are going to have a lot of sight words, and that's going to help them out. When it comes to the other words that aren't sight words, they're going to be able to use the picture. So that teaches 2 decoding skills, or actually 3. Number 1, it teaches them to look at the beginning sound in the word. Let's say the sentence they're decoding is, the frog jumped outside. And they don't know the word jumped. So they can look at the picture, and they know the word frog maybe, or at least they can see that in the picture, but we see the letter J for jumped. What you want to focus in on is activities that are going to match words, or at least beginning sounds, to pictures. And you can do this as games. You don't have to do this when they're reading. You can just have them matching words to pictures. Even a concentration game would work. So that's teaching them, I want to look at my picture for clues, and then I want to look at my words and see which ones look visually the same. So J for jumped, F for frog. Outside, that's tricky. We don't want to even touch that one right now. But yeah, they can use the picture for that. So I also want to clarify, and this is someone else's question, when you look at the picture, that is giving you clues about the context or the meaning of the sentence. So you're actually using your meaning of your picture and visually looking at the word. That may have just confused you, but again, we're going to get that during assessment week. I think it'll start making more sense to you. So Gabrielle, one of the things is playing games that have them tuning into the beginning letter sound and also pictures. That's the beginning steps. Another game that I play during that word of the day clip that I showed you is where you take a sentence and you take a word out, and you have to have them guess what matches the grammar of the sentence and what matches the meaning of the sentence, then looking visually at the word. So playing games, fun stuff. That's how you want to get those decoding things going in isolation. And then when you put it into reading, you say, okay, we're going to use the strategies that we do in our games. That being said, you also want them to feel confident with the strategies. The strategies I showed you in that little video clip, look at the picture, think what makes sense, say the first sound, skip to the end of the sentence. All of those are good. A lot of schools are also using really visual ones. I know my daughter's schools use those, and I think I had it in the presentation as well. If not, it's on Pinterest. But it's like little animals or beanie babies for each of the strategies. So there's like a snake for stretch it out. There's an eagle eye. There's an eagle for like an eagle eye, like look closely. I honestly don't know them all because I have my own thing. But kids remember that. That's a great one to use. So if you prefer that, that's great too. Just stick with what works for your students. If you haven't seen that, I will post that on Facebook with this video for reading strategies. But Gabrielle, games, 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 and knowing what are the steps of the strategies. And you teach them explicitly. That means you're going to be up in front of the class demonstrating them and then playing games for them to practice them. So it doesn't just happen when you're reading. It doesn't naturally just happen. Decoding doesn't just happen. You have to explicitly teach little mini lessons and then give them time to practice. Okay, Hope, which cue is the best? And there's no cue that's the best. When I learned to read, all my teachers said was sound it out, sound it out, sound it out. And some of you may also have been in that era that that's all we did. But we learned that students learn best when you put those cues together. So visual, yes, they have to see, does the word look right? But also, does it sound right in the sentence? Does it match the grammar? Does it match the context or the meaning of the picture and of the words? By having 3 tools to rely on, they can start making better guesses. And that's where those games come in that I just talked about. Because if they get confident in playing those games, then they can do it in text. So all the cues are important. Now, with your most beginning readers, you're probably going to start with the visual, but also the visual paired with the content of the picture. So they get the meaning of the story or the meaning of whatever they're decoding by looking at the picture, and then they know the visual. They match that beginning sound. The other thing we want to do is we want to have them start to look at story frames. And story frames are where the book patterns are predictable. And you'll see that in beginning readers. A lot of beginning readers have the same words, but only one word changes on every page. Like, I can go to the park. I can go to the zoo. I can go to the beach. I can go to the mall. I can go to the store. And so all they have to do is look at the beginning sound of that last word that changes and look at the picture, and they can read. And it's like the best thing to see happen. So we want to get kiddos in those books that they can decode, and they can use those cues very easily, very naturally, and build on that from there. So that's the starting point. So hope all of the cues are important. And just to emphasize again, visual is the visual of the word. It's not the visual of the picture. The picture is the meaning or the context. Okay, so definitely that's something I want you to take away from this. All right, Krista wants to know, how do we teach decoding with beginning readers? And Krista kind of already touched on that with Gabrielle's. You want to start with the basics and work into the harder skills. So we're just giving those explicit instruction and then try it out games and then bringing it into the text. Just a kind of disclaimer, kind of jumping ahead. When you bring it into the text, you want to be reading in small groups. You don't want to do these lessons whole group when they actually have the book in the hand and we want them to decode. You can't monitor the decoding of 20 kids. You can probably monitor the decoding of 4 to 8 students, which is your small reading groups. So definitely know that when you do this with beginning readers, you can give a whole group lesson. You can give them practice with partners, practice in small groups. But when it comes time to actually read, you want to be one-on-one or in a small group. So that's important. Rachel wants to know if there are videos of decoding lessons. And Rachel, I was looking around for some, and I still haven't found any that I really love because there's so many parts to decoding. Decoding can be beginning reader decoding. It can be second grader decoding. It can be third grader decoding, first grader decoding. All the lessons look different, and I'm afraid if I post one lesson, you're going to be confused or think that that's what decoding is, and it's so much more than that. So I'll keep looking, Rachel. But again, I think you're going to see more when we get to assessment week. So let's kind of wait it out and see if that helps you. All right, last question is Kelsey's question. What do you do if the child doesn't understand? Okay, so that's probably going to have some of this stuff. So if you're reading with a child and they just don't, first of all, if they just don't get reading, 2 things are either happening. Number 1, they're not ready to read, or number 2, you have them in a book that's too difficult. So that's step 1. Get them in the right book, or don't make them read when they're not developmentally ready. If you have that scenario where they are ready and you get them in the right book, you shouldn't see too many problems, to be honest. Set them up that there's only a few words they need to decode. Um, you get to that point where you see that they can't figure out the word on the page, then you need to first look at what are they doing to decode, because chances are they're doing something. They're either doing a random guess, they are just looking visually, or they're just looking at the picture for a beginning reader. Those are the things that happen, and that's natural. So the biggest part of decoding is that seeing what they do and then building on it. So if you see that they're just looking at the first letter and guessing words that start with, let's say, F or G or whatever is there, then you have to teach them to look at the picture and do a match. And that's where you pull it out. You do a little mini lesson where you're demonstrating, and then you give them a game to play. If you see that they're not looking at the words at all, this was my daughter, the one with the vision processing. She would read everything, but she wouldn't look at the words on the page. It's the strangest thing. But lots of kids do that. When they're new, they just read the picture. So you need to say, okay, you see that this is in the picture. Now let's find a word that matches. So doing vice versa. So in the beginning, you take the grammar out because the grammar comes, but a lot of kids don't have proper grammar at that age. So you really want to focus in on the visual of the picture, which is not visual, it's meaning. I don't want to confuse you. Boy, that makes my hand look huge. And then looking at the word that you're trying to match it with. So any kind of activities that you can do to match picture to word. And that's what we want to do. Also, building those sight words. The more sight words they know, and the better they are with their letter sounds and their phonics, all of this comes together. So you can see that learning to read is a blend. It's a blend of automatic sight words. It's a blend of phonics and the ability to know those phonic sounds quickly. And it's the ability to decode and use the cues and clues around them. That's what we call balanced literacy. So when you answered that journal question, that's why you needed all pieces, because without those puzzle pieces coming together, you don't have reading, or you just have one part, and it's really difficult for kiddos. So that's your Q&A. If you have any other questions, you can post it below, and I'm going to post those reading strategies for you, and just so you can see that, and maybe you want to pin it. That's all. See ya.